Hello. Hi. Live. Why is this not? Ah, okay. Much better. All right. And then I should unclip that right? Hello? Hi. I hope that I've got everything all set up. Can you hear me? Let's see if I've got sound. Hi, Mom. Do I have sound? Sound and video are okay. Perfect. Great. Wonderful. I'm going to take this link and post it to places like this is a places. Wait, where'd it go? Text channels, general, this one. Paste. At everyone. Yep, so now, there we go. Sorry I'm late to my own stream. I just got a delivery of poop. Composted manure to my neighbor's house. Like down the street. Where I have a garden. And it's beautiful. And today I'm gonna finish this thing. Because I have plans for what I'm gonna do with it, and I'd like to get moving on them. So this is my goal today, is just finish this piece. Might not all be on stream, but hopefully the stream will help motivate me to get it done. Do I have a full 2-minute delay on this? Is this what? Oh, okay. Hopefully this stops being so spotty. There seems to be some spottiness to my internet. I'm sorry about that. We pay for the good internet, but apparently that's not enough. How is everyone today? What's that? I feel like my okay, perfect. -27 Celsius today. That is quite warm. The weather is gradually warming up here today. Or gradually warming up here. We have today's kind of rainy, but not too bad. We had a light frost last night, but we are definitely heading into spring now. Today I planted out my onion sets because I tried to start onion seeds and they didn't work out so well. But I got onion sets and I planted those out in the garden after moving some of the giant pile of compost into my beds. So I have this big garden at a neighbor's down the street, and they are very, very sweet. And you know, they get concerned about like, oh, I hope that the quality of the soil is okay if you're bringing in all this compost. Like, their soil is beautiful, first of all. They've put a lot of work into it. But yeah, I just, I tend to prefer gardening in a sort of no-till system. But when I start up a garden, you know, I want to set it up the way I want, so moving all the stuff into the beds and shaping everything like how I wanted it last year, plus half of my plot, it was someone else who did the same thing, and only more so. It's brought up every kind of weed seed to the surface. So last year, I had more weed, like the soil was great, but I had much more weed pressure in that garden than I do in other gardens. Just because I usually don't do any, it's all no dig. So then I decided, well, I'm just gonna deal with this and cover up the whole thing with a deep mulch system. So I got mulch in. So I got a whole bunch of compost. It's cow manure with wood shavings that's composted, and it's beautiful. It's wonderful. It's so light and fluffy. Also, Ember seems to think it's delicious, which is weird. She was just chowing down. Yes, it is drizzling here too, but it's supposed to be nice and warm, like 15 degrees Celsius over the weekend, which should be perfect for the loading of compost into my garden. So I've got 3 cubic meters of compost. And then this summer I am hoping to grow, well, this coming year, I am hoping to grow, aiming for about 90% self-sufficiency in vegetables, and then a bunch of our fruit as well. Now, we won't be fully self-sufficient in fruit because, well, we don't have an orchard. We don't have space for an orchard. So we've got some berries, and we have a pear tree, but it's not gonna produce very much this year because it's young. Or not pear. Why am I saying pear? Peach tree. We've also got some cherry, like some shrub cherry shrubs. There's a series of sweet sour cherries developed by the University of Saskatchewan, I believe. So, got a couple of those, but again, they're young, so we won't produce very much of that. We have a bunch of strawberries. We'll get some blueberries this year. We have some raspberries, although never as many raspberries as I want to eat. But we'll still have to bring in a lot of our fruit, even the stuff that could grow locally. We don't have enough fruit to supply ourselves. We don't have enough space to grow all of our own grain, all of our own like starchy crops. We might grow some potatoes, but they're like, but in terms of greens, tomatoes, beans, and then we'll also grow melons, and cucumbers, melons. We're hoping to completely be like just mostly self-sufficient. The only reason why we won't hit 100% is that sometimes you want something very fresh that isn't just a green in the middle of winter, and while I will be doing some season extension and I do hope to be able to harvest something right through the winter, it will be greens and maybe some carrots, and everything else in the middle of winter, short of stuff that I can grow indoors. Well, I'm indoors. I do have a lemon tree, so we do get a very small number of lemons. Last year we got 3 lemons. But we can't supply all of our own fruit, and then obviously we're not farming animals, and we don't have enough space to grow all of our own grain. But nonetheless, given that I'm in an urban setting on a 1/16 of an acre, personally, and then that the rest of my gardens are at a neighbor's house, I feel pretty good about if I can just be self-sufficient in vegetables, or pretty close to. So that will be a big achievement. I'm really looking forward to it. So I'm really putting a lot into getting my gardens ready right now. My net connection is rather poor today. I had trouble getting your stream. Hopefully it's okay now. Okay, there was a moment earlier where I was having trouble with my own stream. We've had some issues on and off with our internet for the past couple weeks. Unfortunately, like, we pay for the best internet that's available locally, which is still kind of shitty sometimes. So I don't really, like, and this is a wired connection now. Like, I'm streaming, I've got my camera hooked up directly to my desktop computer. Like, the only limit is the connection out of this house, and we pay for the top one. So nothing I can do to make this stream better, which is really frustrating when in terms of quality of lighting, there's a lot of things I could do to make the quality of this stream better. I don't mean to say I'm great at all of this, but in terms of, like, net connection, it frustrates me how frequently that's a problem, given that I'm maxed out on, you know, the quality of the everything that I can put into it. But that's life. I will have a Discord and Patreon only stream sometime next week. Put up a poll about when that works for people. But I have a custom palette that's been made by a curated set made by Roman Schmal that will soon be available for purchase. I just need to get my shop and YouTube in order first. But I'll give loyal fans, followers, a bit of an early access there, and also I'll do a secret stream that will just be, you know, selectively shown, and I'll also set up a secret shop with early access discounts. Yeah. Not a secret shop. Like the shop is very public, but a secret listing in the very public shop. Because I want to do some rebooting on my YouTube and social media before I go launching stuff. But I also have this palette, which I've paid for. So if the people who already know it's coming and are excited want some early access, yeah. And mine has not been great. Must be the eclipse. Yes! What are you doing for the eclipse? We're watching the weather. We're trying to figure out which direction to go. Because we're at like 98% totality for context, people who are not in the path of the eclipse, there's going to be a total solar eclipse crossing over eastern Canada and the United States. Or, well, not eastern Canada, but Ontario. And so where I live, where Stephen lives, is about 98% totality. My parents will get about 99 point something percent totality. But, you know, complete eclipses are uncommon, and there's not going to be another one anywhere near us in our lifetimes. So Jordan and I are hoping to be able to go watch on Monday afternoon somewhere where there is actually full totality, which isn't, you know, it's an hour drive in not in any direction, but south or west. Hiding, we are probably going to get invaded and our streets will not be able to handle it. But people won't come to KW. We're not in the path of totality. Just don't go to Niagara Falls. Yeah, we were talking about this, like, because everyone from New York is going to go to Niagara Falls. And so Jordan was concerned because we're going to try to go somewhere where we can watch totality. And Jordan was concerned, like, oh, because when we were looking at the forecast, it looks like if we head straight south to Hamilton. Oh, you're in Leamington. Yeah, but people aren't going to go to Leamington. Like, other than people who are already in Leamington, and maybe me. Don't drive. Last two eclipses cross above a town called Rapture. That's great. Yeah, so we considered going straight south, but it's likely to be overcast here and in here and south of here in Hamilton. So we were looking at other options. And so if we head more west, you know, in the direction of Niagara Falls, that will get us totality. Jordan was concerned, like, oh no, we can't go to Niagara Falls because that's going to be insane. Well, we don't need to go to Niagara Falls. Like, I'm not interested in Niagara Falls. As long as we choose somewhere that's not, we're not going to be in the same path as all the tourists coming to Niagara Falls who will be coming from the States. There's no reason for people from Toronto to go to Niagara Falls. They can just go south. Like, they don't have to go that far. They can just go to Hamilton, if they want to. Point Peely Park. We're getting a heavy police presence. Oh! Interesting. Okay, yeah. Yes, that was actually a consideration. You're getting a heavy police presence. So they are expecting that people are going to be going to the park. Okay, well, that is good to know. I mean, I don't need that much park. I just need somewhere to sit down with my dog. We got goggles for Ember. I looked online, like, what do you need to do to protect your pets from seeing the eclipse, and that the internet's like, nothing, you idiot. Your pets don't look at the sun regularly. They're not going to right now, which I agree with, except I have a funny little dog who, she's a service dog, and when we go to for example, the airport, and we're going through security, she looks ahead at the humans ahead of her and studies what she's supposed to do when she goes through security, so that then she can be extra. When she goes through security, she trots through, picks up her leash over by the luggage pickup, and then plants herself, sits down with her leash in her mouth in front of security. So I do think that if any pet is going to look up at the sun, it's going to be my weird little herding dog who wants to put everything in its place and gets very freaked out if things are out of place. People are out of place, and so if we're out in the middle of the day and it suddenly starts getting dark and all the humans are looking up, she's going to look up. I mean, I'm not sure of that. I would actually give it, you know, over a 90% chance that she won't look at the sun, but it's a non-negligible chance that my idiot dog will look up at the sun. Because we're gonna have her out with us. And she'll be with us and whoever else is around us, and she will see all the humans looking up at the sun. I think my dog might try looking up at the sun. So I got her little doggo goggles. And then she already has goggle markings, so she'll have little doggle goggles over her doggle goggles. I wonder what direction the heavy presence in Leamington might be coming from. So I expected the heavy presence, like, yes, there's going to be an insane presence in, for example, Niagara Falls, including probably on the Canadian side, but I would imagine that most of it would come from the States. Because again, like the population centers on the Canadian side, either they're themselves, like, people aren't going to come from Hamilton because they're already in the path of totality themselves. People aren't going to come from Toronto because they're in the path of totality themselves, or very close, so they don't have to go to Niagara. There's people like us where, like, it would be closer for us to go to Hamilton, but it's going to be overcast, so we might head in the general direction of Niagara, but I have no inclination of going to Niagara Falls itself. There's other things closer. I did consider, well, if we have to go all the way out to, you know, Point Pelee, out to Leamington, but I won't go if it's gonna be, I won't go that direction if it's gonna be full of people. Why am I on top chat? Live chat. I'm gonna turn this around so I can get easier access to these guys. It feels a little weird because, you know, I've bottom weighted the shadows on these, so like there's clearly a down side. It looks a little off if you put it the other way, but that's kind of neat. Yeah, let's get that all nice and wet. Okay. Okay, one moment. Where did my... Hello? Where did... Excuse me. Where did my Hello? My channel, okay, but YouTube Studio, where's my, very strange, where did my, assume I am still live. Yes, I'm still live. Okay. Hello. Sorry, I somehow tabbed away and then closed my own view of my stream, which was a little alarming. So I need to finish this today because there is an application due that I want to attach this to. And that's fine from a how much work is left to do and the hours in the day point of view, but my neck is killing me because I was working on this a couple days ago and just hunched over it. At the studio, I put everything vertical. Here, it is easier to film straight down, so I sit this on a desk. But for any length of time longer, it is Not fun. Sorry, I need to go run and do a thing. I'll be right back. Hello. So I'm trying a new thing in the garden this year. Not a new thing, but like a slightly different approach. So I have in the past gotten carried away with buying seeds. It's very tempting to go through all the very pretty seed catalogs and look at all these unique varieties. Oh, this tomato has speckles and it's extra sweet. I need to get that. But the problem is, I mean, first of all, you do end up finding some varieties that you like from, one seed company or another. And as you use those up, you're going to want to replace them. But also you'll find all sorts of interesting things from various seed companies, and you end up spending a lot of money at a whole bunch of different, like, oh, I need to order from this seed company and that one and this other one. And it ends up being, even though a seed packet is only $3 here, $2 there, whatever, it ends up being kind of expensive over time. So there's that issue, and then there's the issue of just collecting a bunch of seeds. Where are you going to store all of these million different varieties? You're never going to have enough space to plant them all. But then also, not all of them are going to work really well in your environment. So gradually I've been saving some seeds from what works best. And then I get concerned that, but if I save seeds from a variety that I like and it was planted next to a variety I didn't like so much, they might cross-pollinate. So now I need to get the seeds that I liked again. So I am dropping all of that, and gradually I'm just going to work on building my own landrace varieties. So planting all the tomatoes that I'm interested in. Ooh. I'm also wanting to plant some hot peppers this year. I would recommend you get started now. I mean, you have a much longer season than I do. So you'll have more time in the fall before it gets cold. In fact, you could probably overwinter peppers by just bringing them inside and cutting them short. But a lot of peppers take a good, 100+ days from sowing to producing. So you could sow them now, and if you sow them now, it'll still be probably August or September before you start harvesting anything. So, yeah. I've overwintered them in the balcony. Oh. Yeah, well then, great. Yeah, as long as they don't freeze, they'll overwinter. Yep. It always throws me when people in much warmer climates talk about winter and because I live in zone 5, 6, which is somewhat of a tipping point, because anything in much warmer zones, the ground doesn't freeze. So, even like zone 7, you put a tiny bit of protection. Like where my parents are in Toronto, they could probably grow a lot of things that I couldn't, because with just a tiny bit of protection, they can get it so that their ground won't freeze solid. Now they wouldn't be able to overwinter peppers outside, but they certainly like figs and stuff, anything where, as long as you can keep the roots from freezing. Now there are, I can keep my ground from freezing in spots, but I would have to, really mound it up with a lot of cover, a lot of whatever, and I can keep things in a covered patio or something. But yeah, there's basically like two big, I would say, tipping points for how, I mean, people in much more polar zones will say there's three, but there's two tipping points on the other side of me, I guess, or three. One of them is, does the ground freeze? Like, you can have below freezing weather above ground, but the ground stays unfrozen. And then there's another one that is, does the, so like anything where the roots can survive, right? So like, there's that tipping point, and then there's the, can you easily protect the leaves from any light frosts? So you're not going to get, you know, weather that tips below freezing for more than a couple hours or so. Then you can just, oh yeah, you just toss a blanket over it. You turn on some incandescent lights nearby. So it always makes me giggle a little bit when people in much, much warmer zones talk about their frost-free dates, and they can't plant things before, you know, it might get cold. Like, oh my goodness. Of course you can. How do you think we grow things up here? But actually there's an even further thing, which is, like, in my zone, we really do wait to plant things like tomatoes until we have frost-free days. And if you are further, if you are, you know, more polar than I am, further north, even by a little bit, they don't. They just learn to protect their crops. So I haven't done very much winter protection. That's actually a thing that I'm looking into now. Now, commercial growers where I am will absolutely protect their crops. They'll plant things much earlier and they'll protect their crops. But we can still get a harvest out of, you know, most annual garden vegetables in our season. We have a fairly long, where I am, we have about 125 frost-free days. So that's, you know, it doesn't go down below 0 Celsius at all. From mid-May to mid-September or so. Which is a long season for Canada, very short for most places. But still enough, and we also get, in that period, we get 2 months where it gets really quite hot. So we can grow all of the hot weather crops. We can grow tomatoes and eggplants and peppers and maybe not like the longest season varieties of all of those. Like, there are some varieties of tomatoes that are just aren't, I mean, they would produce here, but you would get very few tomatoes because they would only start producing at the end of our season when it's already getting colder. Likewise, peppers. There's a few varieties of peppers that just aren't ideal for our climate, not because they won't start producing, but because they won't really get a big crop in and start ripening until it's already getting colder, and at that point they ripen slower. So we do have to choose varieties a little bit, but like even okra, melons, big squashes, like all of those things we can grow just fine. But as far as overwintering, in about a zone 6, you have to start getting pretty creative to overwinter anything that requires the ground to be not frozen. Yeah, maybe even a zone 5. Because I would say I've had some pretty good luck in my front yard that just has a protected microclimate, where I've overwintered now rosemary. Now it is a hardier variety of rosemary, but I did it without any protection. I didn't add any extra like winter cover. There's no frost blankets on it. There's a little bit of mulch because I mulch everything, but it's not you know, it's not under a straw bale or anything. Yeah, maybe like a zone, probably about a zone 5 then is about the tipping point, because again, I can do things in zone 6. We get like 1 Celsius at the worst. Right, so you can grow citrus and peppers and everything outside. You just, if it gets cold, if it gets like towards the coldest end of your year and you're gonna have like a particularly cold day, you just throw some blankets on top or bring a container inside overnight, right? And your peppers will be pretty sad through winter. You cut them back and they don't produce much, but they'll come back the next year. Yeah. So, right, so here I have planted my tomatoes, not all of them. I started planting my tomatoes 2 weeks ago, but inside, like I start them inside under grow lights. I started my peppers. Now, I tried to start my peppers. I usually start my peppers in February or early March. I started peppers in February under grow lights, but I tried to do these little Roxol blocks because the problem is right now my grow area, my indoor grow area is in my dining room. And so starting seedlings is a mess, and I get soil everywhere, so I was trying to minimize that by starting the earliest seedlings in Roxol, and for a moment it looked like it was doing all right, but I found those seedlings were so much more prone to pest pressure. Like they just didn't have whatever, they were just so much more delicate that I've lost the majority of those, and the ones that I haven't, honestly, I think I may have just permanently stunted. I'm very upset about those seedlings. Would not recommend. I prefer to use real soil. So then I started another batch of peppers, about 2 weeks ago. Those ones, they're doing much better. I started them in real soil. And I'm going to do my final batch of peppers I'm going to start tonight, along with my final batch of tomatoes. I started eggplants at the same time as the peppers. And they'll get planted out then. So they'll get planted out around the last frost date. So usually I start checking the weather. I do have frost blankets, so certainly tomatoes I can actually push, like if there's no frost predicted, I can push them a little bit earlier. And then worst case scenario, if there is a frost, like a light frost, I can just put a blanket over them. Peppers don't really like the cold weather, so I usually just start acclimatizing them, bringing the tray out before the last frost date, and then it's like a week or 2 after, so I'll transplant peppers in like June, like directly into the ground or into larger outdoor containers. maybe a little bit earlier if it's on my own property, like in my raised gardens, because those always get extra weeks. I get about 2 extra weeks on each end where they don't freeze, like, or don't frost over. So yo, sorry, apparently my connection has gotten crappy again. Old school trick is large pails of water. They get warm through the day, release it with warmth overnight. Yes, I was just watching this amazing, my dream, you know, in my copious spare time, in my future, in my whatever, I would like to get a property and build my own house with all my lovely building science principles, but also I want to do a passive solar, or at least no like direct heat input greenhouse, and I'm pretty sure we're in a zone 5. I'm pretty sure I can get it to subtropical temperatures so that it never freezes. Like that it mostly stays over 10 Celsius, so doesn't even get, like, wouldn't even defoliate. Like I could grow citrus, no problem. And so then I'll just get a few very cold nights where it might dip to just above freezing. And I can protect a few citrus plants that way. So they won't defoliate and they'll just like stay healthy through the whole winter. Basically, you know, that's a little bit too cold to grow maybe pineapples, but like everything else should be fine. So yeah. And so I saw this video of this guy. It's always great because I found, like, I started, you know, playing with the numbers and like, I bet I could keep it above freezing without adding any extra heat. Just add enough thermal mass. You know, you can make like a good sized greenhouse. You just face it south, put the windows at the right angle, get enough thermal mass in there, get all your angles right, and you can get a greenhouse that never freezes in our climate, right? Right? It's not even that hard. So I looked it up, and sure enough, you know, at the time there were a half a dozen people who had done it. Okay, I'm off to do real life. Okay, bye! I want to get some tomatillos, but I'm not sure if I have the space. Sorry, I just saw that. It's like it added some extra messages in the middle. Tomatillos grow really big, most of them. So yeah, they might crowd you a little bit, but they are very productive. You do need to get at least 2, because they need to cross-pollinate. They're not self-pollinating. But yeah, sorry, so I was watching this, there's been more and more. So when I first looked it up, there was like, yes, there were a few people who had done this. But it was, you know, just a handful. Like you could find documentation about the half a dozen people who had done this. There's one guy in Colorado and one guy in northern BC and one. It's increased. There's more and more. So now it's not a half dozen, you know, it's dozens. But it's still this little community of nerds who are building greenhouses, you know, to go grow tropical fruits in Arctic climates. Very cool nerds who I love very much. And so I watched one of the more recent ones, and he did a thing that I really, really appreciate, because I'd been looking at this and I thought there was some nonsense going on with what some of these people were doing. So they have people there's a lot of they'll talk about a earth battery and charging the earth battery. And so what that concept is you get air. The easiest way to do that is just with ventilation. And it apparently it works in the mountains of Colorado. Like, the numbers actually support it, which is wild to me, because it seems like it shouldn't do anything. All the engineers in this community have been, I mean, I guess partially because most cold climates are they have colder soil. So this works in Colorado. It doesn't work so well in other places. But there's people who do the very simple version of this, which is they take hot air from either the top of the greenhouse or just outside of it. But the top of the greenhouse is actually a very common one. And they cycle it down through the soil directly underneath the greenhouse. So, 6 foot down or even 3 feet down, they'll put pipes in the soil and then cycle it back up and around in this little circle. And so it's just, that's their only energy input, is just a fan to do this little cycle. And the notion is, well, in the summer or when it's hot at the top of the greenhouse, you're charging this soil battery, you're forcing more heat through this thermal mass at the bottom. And then in the winter, or when it's cold at night, you're bringing more heat up. Now, my issue with that is that in deep frost climates, so even our climate, our soil temperature through the winter, 6 feet underground, our soil temperature, our constant soil temperature is about 5 degrees, whereas apparently in the mountains of Colorado, it's about 6, and that 5 degrees, these are Celsius, that is enough to make a substantial difference. But any colder climates, like you go into Alberta, they have like 2 or 3 degree soil temperatures. You get really far up, you have permafrost, right? So at the permafrost line, it obviously doesn't work. But the closer you get, the less gains you get from this, because you're just pumping it into the soil. Now, if you're far enough down that you've got steady state temperature, you can heat it up if you've got a large enough greenhouse, but you're gonna, whatever. I had thoughts about the efficiency of this, and apparently, yes, it does work, but it is less effective, less worthwhile the colder your soil is. Okay, that makes sense. But what this guy in Alberta did was really, really, really clever. In a this is such a simple system, why didn't somebody think of this earlier? Is he just dug down 3 feet, and then he put down R40. He just got secondhand panels from freezer trucks. So he put down R40 foam, then he put down water coils, and then he put down 2.5 feet of sand. Or, sorry, a foot and something of sand, and then he put his soil above that. So basically he dug underground and he built, like, he's planting into soil at the bottom of his greenhouse, but the bottom of his greenhouse, you know, several feet down, actually has insulation. Not just pipes, insulation. And then he didn't dig down on the, on the sides of the greenhouse, he extended fins out another 4 feet to the side of the, out to the side of the greenhouse. So you don't have to go up, you can just go sideways. Works the same. As long as you go slightly under, whatever. You can have a gap there. It works. That part works, so then you're connected to the rest of the soil microbiota. It's clever. And then he has a solar thermal system above the top of his greenhouse. So he has his window, and then his windows, and above that he has not solar photovoltaic, but solar thermal. So evacuated tubes exchanging to glycol. The glycol exchanges to water, and then he pumps his water underneath in a closed loop system. So he has a soil battery, he has a sand battery, but it's inside the insulated envelope, so it heats up to much, much warmer. So suddenly you don't have 4-degree soil that you're heating up. You have like 10, 15, 20-degree soil. Yes, it's a quick and easy geothermal system. But so the challenge with some geothermal is that if you basically, you can extract some heat from the soil or dump some heat in the soil temporarily, but if you are not, recharging your soil battery, so to speak, you're just going to generate a cold spot or a hot spot or whatever, as the case may be. So you either need a very, very big length, or you need some way of resupplying that heat you're moving, right? So this is a quick and easy geothermal system, but so it's geothermal within his insulated envelope. So it's kind of like if you were running geothermal inside your house. Like if you filled a portion of your basement with sand, like if you've got your whole house insulated, you fill a portion within, and then that's where you're storing your heat rather than, yeah, it's clever. It's clever because he's still then his only energy input. So he's in Alberta. His lows are he gets -40 something. And at that point, it doesn't matter whether we're talking Celsius or Fahrenheit. Because that's where they're the same. So he gets -40 something for like overnights for weeks at a time. Yeah. And he's growing bananas in this. He's growing bananas in his place because he's got more than, right. It would never freeze at all. He wants to keep it above 10 Celsius always. So, because he's growing bananas. Also, he's growing trout. He has a pond in this thing. Like a little, he got a big, oh, I don't know what upcycled something or other, to put a pond full of rainbow trout in. Which the pond stays at 17 degrees Celsius. Yeah. This whole thing is wild. He actually has to cool his pond sometimes in the Alberta winter by cycling colder water from a tank that doesn't get hit by sun, or shading his pond. Because his pond is black and absorbs all the sunlight, so he can shade it to cool his pond. The sunlight doesn't hit it because of the angles. It won't hit it in the summer, and then they shade the back of the greenhouse. It's a design that someone else came up with that he improved on. But it's so clever. It's so clever. So yeah, he just has solar thermal, so those are usually used for warming water for showering. And they're very effective at that. So you can easily provide enough solar heat, even if you have less than ideal conditions. You can provide enough solar heat to keep your showers warm, for example, right through the winter, unless it's like overcast for a week. And so this guy, his only source of supplemental heat is he has a small diesel generator. He said his first year they hadn't installed the geothermal system until they hadn't hooked up the photovoltaics until November, so the soil was colder the first year, which makes tons of sense, right? They didn't heat it through the summer. They were building their greenhouse through the summer. They hadn't hooked up their solar photovoltaics through the summer or early fall, so he didn't hook them up until November, by which point the days are very short, and whatever, he can start feeding his soil heat, but he can't. Anyway, the soil was colder. His first year he had 1 week in December, so only a month later, that hit -41 overnights for a week, and it was overcast. And during that week, he said he fired a small supplemental diesel generator. He spent less than $100 on fuel to heat up beside his bananas and keep it over 10 degrees Celsius at night. He said during the day he frequently has to open windows, and that his biggest challenge is how does he needs to put an air exchanger in, because if he opens the windows, it's -40 outside, he's going to kill the things right beside the windows. So as the plants get taller, he's going to need to get an air exchanger to make that a gentler transition. Because he can't just open windows at the top of the greenhouse. Is it fairly large? Yeah, so I can send you this design. He copied someone else's design almost exactly and then just added improvements with the soil battery and stuff. So this is well documented, but I believe it's about 60 feet long by 40 something deep. It's a substantial building. You can scale it down. Things. So you will get more losses overall on a smaller building, right? Because it's the square cube law of area versus volume. So if you have a larger volume, you'll lose proportionally less heat. But yeah. Yeah. So in some future some future where I can get enough land to build myself some outbuildings, I would love to build a geothermal greenhouse. Initially I wanted it home attached. I don't know that geothermal. I wanted, sorry, solar greenhouse, solar heated. I would put my backup heat, I think what I would want is I want a hot tub. I want a wood-fired hot tub. So that the way that I keep my greenhouse warm, if by chance we have that 1 week where it's negative 35, you know, that never happens anymore, because climate change, or, you know, if I move to the Ottawa Valley and we still get the negative 35 week every once in a while, then I could fire up a nice hot tub and have a nice hot bath in my 10-degree greenhouse. That's my plan. I'm not certain it needs to be home attached anymore. It does need to be near my home. If it's home attached, it has the advantage of you can use it to heat your house. It has the disadvantage of then it takes up a lot of the south wall on your house. Well, as much as is attached to your house, right? You can overlap it or have it diagonally, or whatever, something. But presumably, you know, it's nice to have south-facing windows on your house. So if you're taking up the whole space, the whole south face with a greenhouse, that is a bit of a bummer. But yeah, there are people in much more harsh environments than ours building greenhouses with next to no energy input to grow bananas and like truly tropical plants. So it's totally possible, it's totally a thing. And someday when you know, when the stars align and I have the cash to get the land to do these things, I would love to diversify into a proper greenhouse and grow me some subtropical plants. Yeah, supply my own citrus. Even in the city though, like there's a house on the market right now that's sitting for 650,000. Now, I don't know why it's 650. I wonder whether there's some like serious, like, it's being sold as land only, but then they showed the inside of the house. So I'm wondering whether it's got to have like some something. Like for some reason that they're expecting whoever is going to tear down the house, because they're not even charging, like it does not make sense for the house that's there. It's a substantial, like a 3-bedroom home, just a regular home, but it's on a half an acre in Bridgeport right now for 650,000. Great price. We're not in the market right now because we need to renovate our own house. If our own house wasn't in the state that it's in right now, I'd be seriously looking at it. You know what? I will find you that greenhouse video because it is amazing. Oh, for sure. Like, there's a lot of stuff like that where, like, even my current garden, I'm wondering, like, okay, this is a huge part of my life. It is related to my current stuff, but, like, not completely. I do wonder, like, okay, well, do I want to make it into content? Because, like, some of it is interesting, you know? It's like a... whatever. And so then it's just a question of, like, how much I want to be a content creator versus how much I want to actually, you know, the truth is, like, all of these things that interest me, they interest me because they interest me, not because I want to make content out of them, including even art. But it's like, okay, well, but the way to fuel, you know, interest in my art is by creating content about it. And I totally get that when you're doing something like really big and cool, like making a channel, making content about it is such a way of funding it. You know, we watch Samson Boat Co., which is this guy who's he's rebuilding a wooden yacht. He got this like completely shattered husk of a boat for $1. You know, he was a boat builder before, and so he got this offer because the people who owned it, you know, they wanted it to be something to be done with it rather than it just going to scrap. So they sold this guy a boat for $1, and he had some connections. He was able to store it at a friend's property for some time. And so he started rebuilding it, and it's turned into this like multi-year, long project. Okay, it's just you and me. Yeah, that's fine. I don't really mind. I'm just painting. I'm painting and nerding out about greenhouses. That's what I'm doing. Like, you don't have to stick around for me. I'm going to be painting anyway, but other people may join in or they may not. Whatever. I need to finish this thing today, so I'm here. For the next little while, at least until my dinner is done. Yeah. Like once my supper's ready, then I will probably take a break, but that's going to be in about 40 minutes. So that's my plan. If you want to stay with me, we're good. I'm here. But yeah. I would absolutely want to nerd out about my greenhouse. I feel like, yes, that's probably, I don't know if it's the same channel or something different. I think I probably have some preference towards, oh, can we at least keep it simple and keep it to one channel? Surely that there's some major overlap in the people who are interested in my various things. But on a related note, I'm in my current FYI, artist Thomas Schaller is putting up demos on YouTube. If anyone could sorry, there's a little heart over it, convert me, is that convert or something, to me to the very bumpy paper, it would be him. Okay, well, I might check that out. I have like I guess a sensory issue with the very bumpy paper. Like, I just don't like the feel of it. There are definitely applications where I've like, okay, you know what, this is where very bumpy paper could be useful, where you can use that texture to your advantage. Not most of my work. Most of my work, even if like there's parts of it that might want the very bumpy paper, I like clean lines. I like straight line, not straight, but like, you know, line work too much to really make the most of bumpy paper. But there are bits of some of my work that could use bumpy paper, and yeah. Anyway, on I guess a related note to, yeah, you can make a YouTube channel about building a greenhouse, which, like, yes, there are people who are quite very much doing that. Because that's like, it's such a unique, like, stunning project that, like, yeah, you do something big and unique and people want to know about it, right? And so that's how you fund anything. And at some level, that's hopefully the direction that I can figure out how to go with art stuff. Is I'd like to do some more, you know, bigger, nicer stuff. And it's like, well, you have to do it to get the interest. But like, once you're doing something big and unique and interesting, you know, build it and they will come to an extent, hopefully. I'll take a brief break, then return. All right, see you soon. Hello, new viewers. I was just nerding out about greenhouses and my plans for the garden, and I've been trying to figure out to what extent I should incorporate gardening content in this channel. So, context being, I now have a substantial enough garden, not on my own not exclusively on my own property, but at a neighbor's, you know, unofficial community garden space, that I am hoping to produce most of my own food, like reach, most of my own vegetables, not most of my own food, but reach self-sufficiency, at least in vegetable crops. And, you know, that's a cool goal, it's a cool thing, and it's certainly going to take up a lot of my time, the making the food, the preserving it, which I have an assistant who helps me with, but, so I have Destiny's job is interesting. I have an assistant to help me with my work as well as my home life. Because I have a chronic illness. And so in the context of I'm going to be producing a lot of my own vegetables, growing my own tomatoes, I need to can those all. That takes a huge amount of time, and so my assistant will be doing some of that. She actually also cooks for me more regularly, because that's the thing where I kind of have to choose where I devote my energy, whether it's to painting, creating work, or, you know, basic self-care tasks like providing food for myself. And a lot of the time I would prefer to be painting. You're back! Hi! He has an architectural background, so a lot of buildings, real and imagined. I find I stare at the paintings for a long time. Lots of interesting things in them. Okay, I will look that up. That sounds fascinating. He's doing buildings, but he's doing them with really, really bumpy paper, huh? That sounds very interesting because buildings tend to be like that's a much more linear sort of, tends towards cleaner lines than my work, certainly. Sorry, back to the garden thing. Should I post, like, should I start creating garden content? There's a lot of, like, it's going to take up a lot of my time. It's going to take up a lot of Destiny's time where we're doing garden things, and I don't, like, I like that. I don't necessarily feel like everything I do needs to be on the internet, you know. Some of it, obviously everything I do because it interests me at some level. That doesn't necessarily mean I need to make it part of my business. I do feel like, yeah, gardening has an overlap, like a big overlap with what I have made my business about. And so, yeah, I do wonder, like, should I be posting gardening content, especially now that, you know, I'm at the point where with gardening where, like, well, that is a substantial portion of my life, and I'm putting, you know, aiming towards self-sufficiency. It's like maybe a little bit of a unique perspective to be doing, like, homestead gardening at this scale, this kind of urban plot. Like, I'm getting into landraised gardening. Again, that's a very, very sort of niche thing. I feel like I have this conversation with myself all the time. Like, I could do this. I could, you know, this is interesting because I could share this interesting thing. And, like, of course, everything that I do, I'm doing because it interests me. And if it interests me, surely it interests someone else. And that's how you build interest, and blah, blah, blah. But then just balancing that with, to be honest, what interests me is not particularly the content creation side. That's just one of the ways that I've found to share my business, because, you know, there's no profit to be had in just quietly doing things alone in your basement. it's also, it is a nice, like I do enjoy the community that I can create with streaming and creating videos, chatting with people. Like, it's been a great way to meet a lot of great friends now. With similar interests. Building plans are fascinating. Thanks, Mom. I'm glad. Nice to see you. I'll chat with you later. I'm glad my mom is interested in my my other interests. Still kind of curious about what people think about whether I should do gardening content, or whether that's stretching myself out too thin, whether it's like a not sure, like it's related, but how related? Does it make sense? I'm going to flip this around and work on the opposite side here. Like this. Just you and me again, Stephen. At least for the time being. People seem to come and go. That's fine. I just wonder to what extent this is some like ADHD reinventing myself every few years. I'm a engineering scientist. No, I'm a civil engineer. No, I'm an illustrator. I'm a gardener. I'm a transit nerd. And these are all very real, like, you know, interests. They're very real, but to what extent this sort of broad range of interests, if I try to sort of incorporate them all in the same. I see the connections, but to what extent it, you know, I'm working at odds with my own goals if I start just posting whatever I'm interested in, no matter how out there. Oh, okay, here's a painting channel, but look, I have a garden. Still here. Brother is making me a pita pizza. Got a huge pot of soup made, so I'm fairly set. Sweet. Destiny is making me something downstairs. It smells delicious. I actually have no idea what's for dinner. She was browning beef earlier, so presumably that's part of it. A bit of a splitting headache, which is very upsetting as well. Because again, I do need to finish this thing tonight, and I have a artist statement to write that's related, so I do need to work. And this deadline, it's for an award, like a grant thing, and I had actually I'd given up on it because the original deadline was over a week ago, and I had a migraine the day that it was due, so it's just never gonna happen. But then it got extended, and I thought, okay, great, I can have a better submission because I'll have this done. And I put a bunch of work into this a couple days ago, but hunching over this work has, really done a number on my neck. And then, yeah. Have you been painting much recently? I'm trying to play chess also, so my attention is divided. Oh, don't worry about it. My attention is divided between chat and painting and other, yeah. I'm just here. It's nice to have company sometimes when painting. Part of why it's nice to have the studio is because I can just go and work and there's people about, but in a different way, it's nice to be actually chatting. Oof. Ow. I just popped my jaw. Lots of little paintings, cool. Did a tree like doodle. So I'm gonna try to develop that. Cool, sweet. Like, no, right now you're playing chess, but you've got a tree like painting on the go that you're just. Is it at that like looking at it and figuring out what comes next stage? I love that. I'm picturing stage lit trees with ice on the ground, a couple of small figures skating around. Oh, cool. I don't think I've seen you do figure painting. That's cool. Neato. That stage or Times Square kind of look. I should probably review some of his paintings. I mean, life drawings. It's long pose life drawing. I modeled for it once. It was kind of fun. Expect it to be somewhat accidental when it clicks. Yes, happy little accidents, and I love just sort of stretching myself when I see something, like when I've started working on something and and I get an idea and like just like, okay, I like, you know, there's something you can develop here. There's something. This is what I love about art. It's a bunch of little puzzles. It's a bunch of little challenges. And it's so fun when it's like you've been working on something and there's something that you're like just out of reach that you're trying to figure out, how can I make that work? How can I? And then it does. I was really scared of this thing actually because they're all yellow, and yellow is such a challenging color to get shadows and stuff in, and I've got this mix of green and orange and purple shadows that I was concerned about with these guys, and I'm really liking how it turned out. Like, man, it's rare that I get a painting that I don't have something that's seriously bugging me about, but these ones I think I'm going to be pretty happy with. Yeah. Something other than trees and more trees. I should be doing more of that. Yes, so I find that stretching myself, like even if it's not something that I'm going to sell, that I'm going to be really happy with, it's really useful for just, also even for getting that click, you know, that like, something's working better now. I find that sometimes like completely switching gears, doing something different, like I'm going to do, instead of these fussy little, you know, studio paintings, I'm going to go do some plein air, or I'm going to do some urban sketching, or I'm going to paint some cartoons, or do a life drawing session. It's just, it's super useful. And even if that moment doesn't bring me a finished painting, it helps develop future work. It's something I can bring back to my regular work. On a related note, I have some oil paints that I'm really excited to use sometime soon. Analogy with music, starting with a liquor motif and trying to use it in something more substantial. Yeah, like that. I'm really not the best person to talk to about music. I was chatting with my mom about, so my mom really believed that, you know, music would be helpful to us in other parts of life. So I took music lessons throughout my childhood and teens, and I never really took to them. I switched from piano to cello, which I did enjoy cello better than I enjoyed piano, but it was more like hated it less, rather than, you know, I really not a musician. And especially with piano, it's like, how did I take piano lessons for so long and learn so little? Like, it's a skill to practice, to have a half hour of piano practice every day for 10 years and not learn, you know, advance to, oh, well, now you can play a, you know, little tune. Like, I know so little. I am such a terrible pianist for how long I played piano. Even cello, like, I took cello lessons for 6 years? 5 years? And I would not say that my cello skills are reflective of the the 6 years of playing cello and the 5 or 6 years of playing cello and during that time it was like 45 minutes of practice a day. And this was after through most of that time. And I had orchestra, and this was after I already played piano, so it wasn't like I was starting from zero, right? I had a music background. And yet, my ability to read music is, like, I can sort it through. My pitch is terrible. My rhythm is, ugh. And I don't think, like, maybe there's some innate, like, sense of rhythm, but I think, like with most things, like with art, like with whatever, it's largely an interest thing, and it's, I've learned over time that it's how I approach learning, like how I approach learning art. I'm constantly looking for what I can improve and setting challenges for myself, and that was not ever how I approached music. I was just not interested. So, the rule was, okay, you're going to take these classes, and the teacher says you're going to practice for a half hour a day at home. So, you go home, you go practice. Okay, I practice for a half hour a day at home. Was I getting anything out of that practice? I mean, not really, because I was coming home and just, okay, so now you bang on a keyboard for you come home, all right, time to practice piano or cello or whatever, bang on a keyboard go make noise for 45 minutes. Unsurprisingly, making noise for 45 minutes isn't really a way to learn anything. Unless you're actually, trying to improve that noise. But if I was making mistakes, I'd just keep on practicing the same mistakes. It's a very different approach, because I really wasn't all that interested. So, yeah. Short, that's a long way to say that, yes, that sounds like a great analogy. I'm not the right person to use music analogies on, because my musical skill, and really more so my musical interest, is not quite there. Uh-oh. OBS Studio disconnected. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Is this just gonna black out? This is about to black out in a moment, isn't it? Okay. I think typical music education is poor. You keep learning wobbly versions of more and more advanced things rather than just learning to play a note or two with great vibrato and volume control. That is interesting. I will be back to that in a moment. That is interesting. That won't really teach you rhythm and chords like harmony, though. I will say when I'm on both sides of this. I agree and I completely disagree. When I was in cello, I thought vibrato in particular was particularly cool. And vibrato on cello, here. This is the fingerboard of my cello. Vibrato is a wibble like this. And I thought that was just a really, really cool thing, and I really, really wanted to perfect my vibrato. And my cello teacher thought this was silly. And, like, this is such an unimportant thing. Like, don't worry, you'll figure it out when it matters. But maybe play the right note or the right series of notes. That'll be better. On the other hand, he did make me play, just like repeated notes. Like, can you play on an open string? Just keep on playing this note, or just, close your eyes and okay, can we just get you to always put your, like, we're gonna have you play a harmonic and then go back to a, G on a D string. So harmonic, G, harmonic, G, harmonic, G, harmonic, G, just to get me to try to play, the right note, the right... As I said, I wasn't really the best student. Could you stop hurting my ears, please? So, like, in some sense, yes. I certainly would have found it more fun, too. Vibrato is probably more needed on a guitar because the pitch is more fixed by the frets. Right, so a cello doesn't have frets, so it's very easy to play the wrong note. It's also very easy to play in a way that's, like, kind of earache-y. I mean, less so than on a violin. Like, oh man, beginner violinists and the thin and screechy sounds they can make. Cello is a little bit more forgiving that way, which is why I really enjoyed cello. You know, an open string on a cello just sounds nice. It is a nice, rich sound. But it is pretty easy if you're not holding your bow correctly, which I was very bad at holding my bow correctly because, as it turns out, I have hypermobility, pretty dramatic in my fingers. And so when you're holding a bow, here, let me find something a little bit closer to a bow size. Need like a really thick, chunky pencil or something. This'll do. Holding a bow, you know, you're supposed to, you put your hold like this. Your little finger is supposed to just be balancing, and it all sits like this. But there's a fair bit of weight there, and so over time I would just crunch in, and because it would just, you know, whatever, and so then end up just crunching in and all of my fingers bend backwards. That gives you not the best quality of sound. And I do it really badly, and, you know, found out, oh, only 2 decades later that, oh, actually, turns out the reason why I tend towards this is because, you know, most people's fingers don't bend in this format. That is just a me fingers thing. And it was worse, of course, when I was a teenager. Like, I've gotten less, my fingers have gotten a little less dramatically hypermobile as I've gotten older. So, you know, if this is one of those, oh man, like, I guess it would have been nice to know at least that, no, you really are having a harder time with this because your fingers bend in ways that other people's fingers don't. Like, this isn't an everyone problem, this is a you problem. But certainly as far as quality of sound, there is a like, yeah, just a base amount of, can you make a nicer sound? But I think also, like, to some extent you need to adjust to what people want to study. Like, you know, music teachers will give you all sorts of, like, can you just do a million scale drills? And the truth is, most students, certainly most children, but I think even adults, would much prefer to have something that starts sounding a little bit more like music, and you will learn as you go. Like, you know, it's similar to painting, I guess, where I actually do encourage people to, like, just make a painting. Yeah, is it going to be the best painting ever? No. Is it going to be Da Vinci? No. But you probably learn more painting, even as far as color mixing, than doing, like, oh, I can make a mixing chart. You know, you're going to learn more about color by painting with it than you are by making a million mixing charts. Not that I discourage making mixing charts. That definitely has its place. But I think even if your ultimate goal is to get your notes really clean and your sound control perfect and all of this, that you might, like, you'll create a lot of bad music in the process for sure, but that especially as a child, creating some like really like playing some really wobbly little versions of Mary Had a Little Lamb, or even, you know, the Bach suites. That's sort of where I stopped. Was I got to, when I finished high school, I was at just about the level where I could start tackling the Bach suites. And I decided, you know what I'm going to do? I was expecting to take 6 years in university. Turns out I took a little bit longer. But 6 years, 6 Bach suites. That's what I'll do. I also didn't end up learning my Bach suites. As it turns out, my interest in cello was really just not that much, and so I just pretty quickly stopped practicing. But that had originally been a, like, hey, wouldn't that be nice if I just, every so often pick up a cello and learn some Bach suites over the course of 6 years. And I feel like, you know, practicing is better than not practicing, for sure. If a music scale were played like a paint scale, you might do, re, mi, fa, so, do, like, so many paint scales get darker, then water is added, then the value jumps up. Yes, and that is, I mean, certainly with piano, right? Like with piano, the notes are there, so there's no, the point of the scale is not like, can you press this key? Of course you can press this key. It's getting the volume control and the timing on it so that it's all even. So that you're not like, oh, okay, and then, oh, now I'm gonna have to take a long time to go to my next note. Whoops, oops, this is supposed to be a sharp. I hated scales. Come on, can I do something more interesting? So I think at some level, yeah, like, you're gonna learn more doing something more interesting, partially because you're gonna be more interested. And I think that's especially true of children. Like, you have to keep their interest, else they're not going to learn anything. And they're not going to be very interested if you're like, oh, you're not allowed to do anything interesting. You're not allowed to play any real music yet. So yeah, at some level, like, I have some agreement with you where I'm like, yeah, I mean, if you've got someone who's interested in playing vibrato, like, by all means, teach them vibrato. And also, like, I seriously feel for my poor cello teacher and my family who had to listen to me repeatedly playing notes that were just completely off. Like, this is not a C sharp. This is something else that you're playing that's just like randomly on the neck of your cello. somewhere. It's not even a note. And you're not playing it in any, like, you know, you're screeching your bow. The whole thing sounds awful. Please stop hurting our ears so much. Play one note well before you try playing a series of 30 notes poorly. But on the other hand, I feel like I would have been even less interested if that was the only thing I was allowed to do. Not that I was greatly interested to begin with. Mind you, if you're a cellist in an orchestra, that ends up being all you do is just, can you play the same note over and over and over again? You're the beat for the orchestra. Which made orchestra kind of a fun social experiment, if nothing else. My bestie in orchestra was a much, much better musician than I was. He is a much, much better musician than I am. Not that we either of us has really kept up with playing music past high school, but Olivia would prank the rest of the orchestra. You know, the conductor wasn't around once, so the whole orchestra, for lack of a conductor, they'll time themselves to the beat. And who makes the beat? Well, whoever is the bass. Who's the bass? The cello section. And what does the cello section do? They follow first chair. So Olivia was first chair, I was second chair, and there were two people behind us. And Olivia turns over at me and grins. We have a guest conductor who was, he was the building maintenance, like the janitor for the Royal Conservatory, because our conductor was late. He'd been in an accident or something. So he called in and they got, okay, well, you know, this janitor guy can just watch for the little while. So he just goes to the front and he's just like, all right, what are you playing? Carmen? Okay, we're playing Carmen. So you're just, you play and I'm just gonna do this. So Olivia turns to me and grins, and every repeat, so our section was just like the same note over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. Lots of fun. So every repeat, she just speeds up by 20%. And so she speeds up, I follow her, the rest of the cello section follows us, and the rest of the orchestra follows the cello section. And so the violins, who have a much more interesting part than the cellos, start out at a reasonable pace, and by the end they're just like racing through their part, tripping over themselves until I think it was the violin second chair, several repeats in, what the hell is happening? Or when we had a piece that again had a bunch of repeats and something very slow and then just 28 straight bars of rest, we'd have these sectionals. So each, you know, often we'd practice as an orchestra, but then we would also split off into groups, so each instrument can practice their section. Well, because we were practicing this piece where our piece had very little actual challenge to it, and then 28 bars of rest, what did we practice? Well, we practiced how to spin our cellos in unison to then surprise the orchestra with spinning cellos. That was fun. So yeah, I enjoyed orchestra. Not really for the music. Really, it was a fun social event. Sorry, I missed the last few minutes restarting the computer. My connection is very faulty. I was just talking about my fun times in orchestra as a teenager, not playing music, being a little prankster. we were having a nice chat too, and I see Thomas Schaller just uploaded something. Oh! That's exciting! Okay, I should probably go have my supper soon. Take something for this headache so that when I get back to this, I can finish this up and submit my application. All right, I think this is actually it for me at this point, but I will be back later in the evening, maybe. I don't know if I'll stream that, but we'll see. Bye-bye.